23 seconds. That is how long Pete Hegseth sat completely frozen after Mark Kelly placed the first document on the table, not reaching for his water glass, not glancing at his attorneys, not adjusting the microphone in front of him. Frozen. The particular stillness of someone who has just watched the exit they had been counting on disappear in real time. Kelly had been waiting 6 weeks for this moment, and Hegseth had no idea what was coming. Here is exactly what happened. The hearing had been running for nearly 2 hours. Republican members had used their time to praise Hegseth's leadership, his commitment to the troops, his record of reform. Democratic members had pressed on budget cuts, troop readiness, and the controversial reassignment of senior military officials. Hegseth had handled every question the same way. Confident, quick, a former television host's instinct for filling airtime without saying anything that could be used against him later. He checked his notes twice. He leaned back in his chair. He smiled at a Republican colleague across the table. That was the last moment he looked comfortable, because Mark Kelly had been sitting at the far end of that committee table for the entire hearing with 2 black folders in front of him. Closed. Untouched. He hadn't asked a single question through the first hour and 40 minutes. Other members took their turns. Hegseth deflected smoothly, and with every clean answer he gave, his posture relaxed a fraction more. That was the trap. Kelly is not a politician who performs for cameras. He is a retired Navy combat pilot and NASA astronaut. He flew 39 combat missions. He has been in situations where the difference between a good decision and a bad one is measured in seconds and lives. When Kelly asks a question in a hearing room, it is not a question. It is a targeting solution, and he had been building this one for 6 weeks. At 2:47 p.m., the chairman recognized him. Kelly opened the first folder. "Secretary Hegseth," he said, and his voice carried the flat precision of someone who has spent decades in environments where every word matters. "I want to talk to you about readiness. Specifically, I want to talk about what happened to the 101st Airborne Division's operational certification between October and December of last year." Hegseth's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did, a calculation beginning. "Can you tell this committee what the certification status of the 101st was on December 14th? 2 seconds of silence. "Senator, the readiness of individual units involves operational details that I'm not in a position to characterize in an open setting due to." "I'll help you." Kelly reached into the folder and pulled out a single document. He set it on the desk in front of him without drama, the way someone places something they have been carrying for weeks. "This is a Defense Department internal readiness assessment, dated December 14th, produced by your own department's evaluation office. It documents that the 101st Airborne Division failed its operational certification review for the 3rd consecutive quarter. The summary at the bottom uses the phrase, and I'm quoting directly, 'not mission capable for sustained large-scale combat operations.'" He looked up. "Not mission capable. Those are your department's own words, Secretary Hegseth. About one of the most storied combat divisions in American military history. Can you explain to this committee how that happened on your watch?" The room had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next sentence. The heavy, thick quiet of people who have just heard something they cannot unhear. Hegseth's right hand moved to the edge of the table. His senior aide, seated directly behind him, leaned forward almost imperceptibly. "Senator, readiness assessments involve complex variables across training cycles, equipment availability, and deployment rotations that. 3 consecutive quarters." Kelly's voice didn't rise. It simply became more precise. "That is not a training cycle issue. That is a pattern. The 101st failed certification in June. It failed in September. It failed in December. And your department's own evaluators used the phrase 'not mission capable.'" He pulled out a second document. "This is the budget authorization your office submitted in November. The same month, the 101st was heading into its 3rd failed review. It requests $2.3 billion for what your department describes as transformation initiatives, included in those initiatives. A line item of $340 million for what the document calls leadership realignment and cultural reorientation programs." He set it down. $340 million for cultural reorientation. In the same quarter, your department's evaluators were writing "not mission capable" about the 101st Airborne. He looked directly at Hegseth. Can you tell this committee what leadership realignment and cultural reorientation means in the context of a division that cannot pass its combat certification? The silence that followed lasted 23 seconds. Every camera in the room repositioned. Every journalist in the gallery stopped filing. A Republican member who had spent the morning defending Hegseth suddenly found something very interesting in his own notes. Because 23 seconds of silence from a Secretary of Defense in response to a question about his own department's budget and his own department's readiness assessment is not a pause. It is an answer. And everyone in that room understood exactly what kind of answer it was. Hegseth finally spoke. His voice had lost something. The television host's fluency was still there, but underneath it, something had tightened. Senator, the transformation initiatives you are referencing are part of a comprehensive effort to build a more lethal, more focused fighting force. The programs described in that line item are designed to eliminate distractions from combat effectiveness, and they are described as cultural reorientation, Kelly said. In a department where your own evaluators are writing not mission capable, I want to be very specific with my question. Did the leadership realignment programs your department spent $340 million on in any way contribute to the 101st's failure to achieve combat certification? 4 seconds. Senator, I categorically reject any suggestion that our transformation efforts have negatively impacted readiness. And explain the 3 consecutive failures. Kelly's voice was steady, unhurried. The voice of someone who has all the time in the world because the documents in front of him have already done the work. Your department evaluated the 101st 3 times. Your evaluators wrote not mission capable 3 times. And in the same period, your department spent $340 million on programs you cannot define in plain language in this hearing. Those 3 facts exist simultaneously. I am asking you to explain how. Hegseth reached for his water glass, set it back down without drinking. His hands, which had been still for most of the hearing, pressed flat against the table. The readiness challenges facing the 101st are multifactorial and involve equipment supply chain issues that predate this administration. The supply chain issues are real, Kelly said. I'm not disputing that. What I am asking about is the $340 million, because supply chain issues don't cost $340 million to address. Cultural reorientation programs do. He opened the second folder. This is a memo from the 101st Commanding General to your office, dated November 3rd. 3 weeks before your budget submission. In it, the Commanding General requests additional training resources, maintenance funding, and equipment prioritization. He describes the division's readiness challenges in specific operational terms. Kelly looked up. Your department received that memo on November 3rd. Your budget submission came 17 days later. The Commanding General asked for training resources and maintenance funding. Your department allocated $340 million to cultural reorientation. I want to give you the opportunity to explain that decision directly. 17 seconds of silence. Hegseth's attorney rose. Senator, the Secretary would note that budget allocations involve complex interagency processes that cannot be fully characterized through individual line items presented without. The line item is from your client's own budget submission, Kelly said. He didn't look at the attorney. He kept his eyes on Hegseth. Produced by his department, submitted to Congress under his signature. The attorney sat down. Kelly closed the second folder. He set both folders in a neat stack to his right. He folded his hands on the desk. The documents don't disappear when the hearing ends. The Commanding General's memo is in the congressional record. The readiness assessments are in the congressional record. And 23 seconds of silence is now part of the permanent record of a man who asked Americans to trust him with their military. But here is what the clip doesn't show. What happened after the gavel fell? Hegseth's senior aide met him at the door with a single printed page. Hegseth read it standing in the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall. He didn't move for nearly 30 seconds. Then he folded the paper once, put it in his jacket pocket, and walked out without speaking to anyone. Nobody knows what was on that page, but everyone who watched him read it understood one thing. Whatever it said, it wasn't good news. And the $340 million that couldn't be explained in that hearing room still can't be explained in any hallway in Washington either. Not mission capable. 3 consecutive quarters. 23 seconds. Mark Kelly walked out without speaking to reporters. He didn't need to. The documents had already said everything, and the silence had confirmed the rest.